Hey, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Clay, the host of Purpose Driven Pivot, and it is my pleasure to have someone that I consider a friend, an ally, and someone that I just truly admire, Kacey Venning, joining us today. Kacey, how you feeling?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm doing awesome. And so we want to thank those folks that are joining us via Zoom and also joining us via Facebook Live. I've said this before in the past, and I want to make sure that folks know that we started this journey a few months ago, starting with an event in June. These interview series are a part of a broader conversation that we want to have with people like Kacey that are leaning into their leadership and not just leaning into their leadership in these unique ways, but also pivoting along the way during their journeys. I have the pleasure of having a lot of friendships with the folks that we have interviewed, in addition to the folks that we've already got full for October and filling out November. And so, Kacey, I'm really, really excited that you're able to close out September with us, with a bang. I mean, we've had some phenomenal conversations, some underlying themes that have been exposed as well. But the unique thing about these dialogues have been the individual stories, and the feedback that I've gotten is that we've been able to keep it candid. And so, because of the leader that you are and everything that you continue to do and will do, I want to make sure that we keep these conversations candid. We're able to go anywhere that we need to go along your journey as it relates to pivots. And I was laughing, y'all, before we started because I can't talk to the guests before we start conversing because you miss a whole lot of content. It's happened with every episode with the exception of one. And so Kacey and I were talking. I'm like, Kacey, stop. Stop, Kacey.
My notes.
You're right. We've got to come back to those conversations. But that's the beauty in having a relationship with someone that you admire and continue to build and work with, even when people don't know, whether on the surface or behind the scenes. One of the things that I want folks to learn, Kacey, through a lot of these types of conversations, when you're working with folks in the community, you people like you have relationships everywhere. And so don't be surprised what name may come up, what topic may come up, and just tune in. And so we're again excited that so many people can join us because we got another awesome response from this Kacey. And so I know you're doing good. I know you're grinding. Folks, Kacey is on all the times, 24 hours. She's not just a consultant in the mental health space. She is a community leader. She's a co-executive director. Is that co-executive director of Hey, Helping Empower Our Youth?
Well, co-founder and executive director.
Co-founder and executive director. Shout out to Katie, who's somewhere working too. We were just talking about you prior to the show. We're extremely proud of the work that you continue to do with Kacey. And so Kacey has also, in addition to her leadership through Hey, taking a real foothold in a conversation that a lot of people are having regarding the water boys or the corner boys, whatever the conversation might be with our youth, right? With our youth that are searching for opportunities, our young entrepreneurs. Kacey will tell you a little bit about her journey in that as well. And so, Kacey, I wanted to give you really an opportunity to tell folks a little bit about who you are, and then we'll jump right in. So, Kacey, the floor is yours. It's good to see you.
Same here. Thank you so much for this. And before going any further, just public congratulations to you and Shani. Just so excited about that. And
Got hard with her.
Right. um,
But thank you for the friend that you've been to us, and we're looking forward to celebrating with you next year.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. I don't ever know how to answer that question. And that's because a lot of who I am, I've always been, if that makes sense. I come from a very tight-knit family. And so a lot of my personality is rooted in being the daughter of, a man born in 1926 in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, and a mother born in 1945 who integrated some of the first public schools as a teacher. And I lived my life watching them serve other people. And so that is really the footprint of who I am. So when I get asked that question, I go to the basics. Born and raised in Virginia Beach, Virginia, the baby of the family. And I think because our family is so tight knit, I needed to kind of break away a little bit. And so in 98, I came down to Atlanta to attend the historic Morris Brown College.
Mo B, shout out to Morris Brown, baby. Coming back.
Nothing like it. Nothing like
Mo B is coming back. We got some good news this week around accreditation. Had
Yes.
some great news with Xavier Peoples last week with HBCU changed, and they're signed up to start raising money. And so
I
it's
love
good.
it. I
Good to
love
hit.
it.
Good to hit a Mo B. I mean, great to hear. But go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. It's a conversation. And I think I mentioned that in part of what we were talking about before, and maybe even my introduction, we get right into one of the pivots, is that I wasn't able to finish at Morris Brown because of some of the accreditation issues we were having back in, the early 2000s. And so I had to finish my coursework at Georgia State, but so much of my college experience is rooted in that HBCU legacy at Morris Brown. And it really set the tone for what I wanted to contribute. So I went and got my bachelor's in sociology. I'm currently a student at the Interdenominational Theological Center, working on my master's of divinity with the focus on mental health, where it intersects and meets the faith communities. And really, those things make up who I am. People always ask me how I'm able to do what I do when it comes to serving folks. I don't know anything else. I grew up, and at any point in time, my mother would sit me down and say, so-and-so was going to live here for 6 months, for a year, because they didn't have any place else to go. And I found myself doing the same thing with friends who've become family, here in Atlanta. If you have room, mentally, emotionally, physically, you do what you can. You make room for those people in your life. But I've worked all over Atlanta, Hands on Atlanta, Points of Light, Families First, Atlanta Public Schools, Office of Youth Services with DeKalb County, the state office here for the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And along the way, I've built all these relationships. And again, those are things that help remind me of who I am. And so I'm now learning how to build time for myself, right? Build time to develop these personal aspirations and realize that while service is so much of who I am, there's still more of me that I want to uncover. But yeah, that's me. If it's not about people, then I don't know what to do with myself, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to your experience starting Hey, we actually, I don't know if we first met through Hey, Kacey, but I remember going to a lot of the events that you all were hosting in the community, which is just awesome. Beautiful events, annual book fairs and book drives. When we talk about the essence of literacy in our communities, I remember going to one of the book fairs, and I've been to a couple, but one particularly that catered to Black authors, and going in and meeting so many Black authors that were, I guess, based out of the Atlanta area. And if they weren't, they were traveling in and walking out just with a handful of books, a bag full of books, because, wanting to serve authors in the community. You all connecting the bridge and connecting that gap is something that I saw really firsthand, particularly with literacy and helping through the nonprofit lens. And so, let's talk a little bit about, the start of Hey in the context of your experience, and then fast forward to now.
Yeah. Hey happened organically. And a lot of what we do, even in that instance that you shared about the book fair, all of that was organic. Katie and I both served as AmeriCorps members. And when we became alums, we wanted to still do something with the young people we had built relationship with, specifically with the young men who were Black and brown young men at Hope Elementary, which is now Hill Hope, off of Boulevard, which was a school that a lot of the Bedford Pines students would go to. And if those of you are not familiar why Bedford Pines is so critical in mentioning, because at one point in time, it was literally the poorest street in the state. And so those were the young people that he was serving. And we didn't want to just cast them to the wayside, because that's what had been happening a lot. And so we thought, let's go ride some bicycles with them. The Beltline was brand spanking new. Nobody knew all the ins and outs and all the stuff that came along with the Beltline.
You remember those new Beltline days? And everyone's
Yes,
like, well,
so excited.
what, the line belt? What's going on here? What's happening?
Absolutely.
Listen, now the Beltline is like its own. I saw the Beltline itself walking down the street. I'm like, this is own.
It's on zip code.
thing.
I'm waiting for it to happen.
Right.
But we realized they couldn't ride the bicycles, right? So the Atlanta Hawks had come, redone the turf or the basketball court, given new bicycles, but they couldn't ride them, or they had bikes that didn't work. And so we thought we were going to ride, but then we spent the day fixing the bike. Then it was, well, can you come back next week? My friend needs a bike that needs fixing, or my mama has a bike that needs to be fixed. And we found ourselves coming back week after week doing bike repairs. And so a STEM program developed itself organically out of that. And we began to get calls from organizations and churches and schools about, can you come do something similar with our students? They are, over robotics. They don't think math and science apply to them. They don't want to code. They don't want to hear anything about engineering. And we realized that a lot of our children were missing the mark in math and science because we focused on just one part of what STEM looked like, instead of letting them know that STEM is in everything that you do. And so we use the bicycles, the go-karts, the old truck engines, sewing and gardening and cooking to say, look, you do STEM every day. And that translated into higher math scores, higher science scores on their CRCTs and standardized testing, because now they can make the connection that math and science is for me. And like I used to tell our students, like, we invented math and science, right? So we do our history. You can't let other folks outshine you when it comes to this. Like, we invented it. And it gave them a sense of empowerment. And we continued with the STEM program for a long time. And the way that the Hey, Let's Read book festival came about, again, organically. I was working at Boyd Elementary School doing wraparound services, and Scholastic said they weren't coming to do the book fair because the school could not produce the profit that they needed to ensure that it was worth it for them to come. And the librarian...
We see how those corporate relationships in a time of need vacate first.
Absolutely. Instead of running to fix the problem, they find themselves, moving themselves away from it. And the media specialist, because I know they're not librarians anymore, but media specialist was going to put the deposit on her credit card. So we did a quick impromptu fundraiser, raised $500 so that at least all the third graders could leave with one book. But I was very upset. And I said, now I could get all over Twitter and start this smear campaign about why Scholastic, you got all these billions of dollars, you can't come into these, Black communities where they need the books the most and give away books, let alone say you're not coming because you're not going to make any money. And so I said, well, we're going to have our own book fair. Forget them. I'm not going to beg them.
The power in that for the folks that are listening and watching, I mean, Kacey, the point around, hey, yes, there's this advocacy of things that need to happen, but we can go downtown and we can send the emails and the tweets, but we got to come back and still have a solution.
Absolutely.
For our prized possession in our students.
Yeah. And I just thought we were gonna have one little book fair, right? For students. Nervous that first day, looked up, about 800 people had come through the door because they were waiting on it. Wow. Right? I did my research. There was not another book festival dedicated to children of color in the entire Southeast region. Not one. And so we did have people come from Jersey and Detroit and Baltimore and New York to be a part of those first few book fairs. The second one, it was 1,200 people. I was getting security from next door, like, hey, what's going on? Where are all these cars? And it just grew to a place where now, when we weren't able to have it this year because of the pandemic, it was, when are you coming back? Can you find a way to still do it? Can you find an alternative? Because children really enjoyed seeing themselves on the pages of books. And unfortunately, you can't walk into Barnes and Noble and find more than 20 titles, or
Sure.
you know, you don't know what to search for on Amazon. And to be able to kind of curate that for them was something that families and educators really enjoyed. So that's become, you know, a really big part of our Hey identity. And then I think the work that we're doing right now with the Water Boys is
Well,
that,
before I
okay,
wanted to, before you transition into
yeah,
that, I wanted to, you know, part of the conversation extends around just the need. I know that we've had some conversations based on facilities and locations, and so as you know, we go forward, even considering COVID, when we think about large enough spaces to host,
yeah,
you know, these new ideas around book fairs to increase literacy rates in our communities. For those folks that have connections and resources and are
yeah,
attached to organizations that have space, I mean, we've had plenty of conversations around, you know, can we get this certain square footage in this side of town and it be an easy place for people to get in and out and not pay for parking? And so I know that that's been an opportunity in the past. I want to let folks know that as we think through opportunities going forward to helping, you know, people on this platform, if you got a big space, you know,
mhm,
like a Congress Center or big
yeah,
old auditorium or something, social distance style, and we wipe down the books, we can, you know, hit us up and let's make it happen.
that's right. That's
Indeed,
absolutely right.
indeed. And so
Oh,
go ahead. And so go ahead. I just want to make sure I add, you know, those types of opportunities
no,
as we
I
kind of discuss
appreciate
things.
it.
Yeah,
Because I get focused on the why and forget you need some of the how,
yeah.
right, to make those things meet.
Hmm.
But yeah, the work that we're doing with the Water Boys now is, I think, one of those pivots in our organization. You know, we were talking a little bit before how I've kind of flown under the radar a lot here in Atlanta. And you're right. I could sit here and name drop all night, honestly, and it be folks that I literally can get to without having to call somebody else to give me a phone number or give me an email. And for me, it has not been another moment in my professional career where I have felt comfortable enough to call on those relationships, to hold people's feet to the fire, so to speak, to make sure that they showed up. Because while all the work that we've done has always been worth it, this right here was different because we could see the direct impact related to life or death for these young men. And even that happened organically. That happened with Katie riding down the street and seeing these young men kind of congregated in one place. We know that this isn't new, right? This, what they're doing is not new. It's been happening really 20 years in
Yeah.
Atlanta, whether it's candy or whatever it was. But the pandemic exacerbated it because now on March 13th, schools were shut down as we knew it. A lot of these young people were left to raise themselves or be at home all day, finding some way to fill their time,
Mhm.
low hanging fruit, money. It was an easy answer for them. And so you see this explosion of the number of young people, and that came with its own challenges. And so he would ride by and see them. I would see the same group. And then finally it was, let's just stop. Do they have masks? Do they have trash bags? We weren't even thinking engagement, relationship, programming, none of that.
Mhm.
And then one day we began to spend more and more time with them. Why are you out here? Right? There's nothing else that you can do. And the truth was, it wasn't. The rec centers were closed, boys and girls clubs were closed, churches had closed their doors, after school programs were non existent. So to say they needed to find something else to do, like, how is that possible when
Right.
the world was shut down? And
Mhm.
so we wanted to be able to at least be more effective, have them be more effective in what they were doing if they
Yeah.
were going to spend their time there.
Yeah.
And what we learned is that some of them have to go home to pay where they stay,
Mhm.
right? That they can't stay there for the night if they don't come in the house with money in their pocket.
Mhm.
Some of them are literally helping to pay rent, pay utilities. And if they're not handling that type of responsibility, they're literally responsible for their own personal livelihood,
Mhm.
whether they're going to eat, soap, deodorant, underwear, shoes.
Mhm.
If they don't buy it, it doesn't get bought. And that's a hard reality when that's not how I grew up, right? I mean, up until I'll be 40 October 30th. I mean, up until about 2 years ago, I was still calling home when things got really, really tight because I knew my family was there to catch me. And to see a 15-year-old who's really out there by themselves was jarring for me. And what I realized is that 16 is the new 18. That if you have younger siblings and I can get you to 16 because that's the legal age for you to be able to drop out of school, I've done my job. Try your best to stay out of jail. Try your best not to get shot. But I got you to 16. You got to figure out the rest of it. And how do you figure that out at 15 and 16?
Right. You know, I remember, you know, even back in my days, and I'm blessed and highly favored, but, you know, part of my narrative and story is, you know, when I started to get my first jobs, you know, I was helping to help pay utilities in the household. And just thinking back to those times and listening to you, you know, you lose a part of your childhood, not just in time, but also in the way that you think about responsibility.
Right.
You know, the acceptance that if I don't help to make ends meet by any means, you know, what that means for the people that I love and care about in my household or in my living arrangement or in my world.
Yeah.
Right? It's a different type of thinking for children or for what folks, you know, are comparing to, you know, other scenarios that other youth might be experiencing. And it really, really has everybody grow up really, really fast. And it's unfortunate because that's a truth that a lot of folks have just not, they just haven't accepted. And like you say, for decades, just haven't accepted that.
It's not new. And, you know, as we talk about these pivots, a decision had to be made. Do we just stay out here on the street, make sure they don't get hit by a car, right? Buy a couple of cases of water for them? Or do we use this to effectuate some change? And we went all in. And I can't speak for anybody else who works on my team or works with Hay, but I went in at a personal level that I didn't think I had within me. And what I mean by that is that these are my boys, right? I have 15 sons now that I get calls 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Miss Kacey, I get caught up in a situation. What's the best thing for me to do? Well, one, find yourself home, right? But sometimes you got to move quiet, or, you know, something happened with my mom or my uncle, or in being able to put those resources together. Working with, you know, shout out to Dr. Dan over at APS, right? One of the associate superintendents, helping to get some of my boys re-enrolled into school because they had been kicked out for lack of attendance or discipline. But really hoping that with this connection, they have an opportunity to do something different, to hear some of these young men who got kicked out, to say, Miss Kacey, I want to go back to school, right? You've talked to me about the value of it. I want to try again, knowing that I'm going to walk that journey with them. It's bigger than just a regular youth development program. And I've said this on other platforms, we can't do youth development the same way we've been doing it.
Right.
It's just impossible. I was on a team about 4 years ago to help to rewrite some of the curriculum for the National Boys and Girls Club. And even doing that, you know, it's a contract job. You got to give people what they want. But I'm sitting there looking like, this don't work, right? Like, you cannot continue to engage youth the same way you did in 1980, 1990, or even in 2000. And if we don't pivot there and make some kind of change, understanding the breadth of all that these young people bring to the table, sitting them down for a workshop, making them watch videos, going through a PowerPoint, it's not what they're going to plug into, because they move so quickly and they move so fast. And we have to be very, very watchful and mindful, you know, of that. And so, you know, with these particular young men, the goal was to get them, you know, off of the street. The city decided, hey, we don't want them out there. You know, the sale of water is not sanctioned. It is illegal. We've had our challenges with what's really the difference between detainment and arrest when it
Yeah.
looks the same?
It's a real public policy issue that
Absolutely.
if elected officials continue to not address it, it's just like anything that comes with public policy. If there's not a lean in on it
Mhm.
to really get attached to it,
Yeah.
then it never really gets to solving issues. It just reminds me in listening to we both are those types of servant leaders that cross these thresholds.
Mhm.
And I think that so many people in these spaces they come up to those thresholds and say, if I go this far, then that means I'm going to get a call at 3 a.m. and not 3 in the afternoon.
Yep.
And, we've got enough, I believe, in the Atlanta ecosystem around nonprofit dollars and resources to have that threshold mentality, because you got so many folks that refuse to build relationships. With my youth that are in my neighborhood, they know me coming by with a plastic bag saying, pick up the trash.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because either I'm biking, running, walking, or driving by them. We have this relationship to where I even go out there and pick up the trash and say, this is what I found. And Shani's like, what are you doing? That type of thing. But she understands that, and that's why I love her so much, because we've got a relationship to where we have this threshold mentality where we've had to go over and beyond and help people.
Right.
And Kacey, I think that a lot of people just aren't willing to do that. They might be scared of that. I don't know if it's folks too lazy to do it, right? But there's something that hasn't gotten us to this point to where if you got this attitude where you, like a leader like yourself that says, hey, I'm willing to help holistically. I think that's really what it is holistic help. What are we really doing if we're not doing that, right?
Absolutely. And I'm fully aware everyone does not have the bandwidth for multiple reasons to do it. But for those of us who know that this is part of our call and we have a grace for it and we choose not to do it, that is where we see the problems arise. I've had so many people close to me, close to this work, guys set boundaries. And that's like, I understand setting boundaries. Boundaries are necessary for everything.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for me, it is hard to tell a child, because they're children, no, when what they're looking for is nurturing, they're looking for someone to love them unconditionally, because that is not what they get from where they're supposed to get it from. So for me to say, I'm going to nurture you and love you until 9 o'clock, and then at 9:01, when ish hits the fan, don't worry about calling me, right? I've never been I'm not that type of person in my adult relationships with my friends and my family. I'm not gonna be that way with children who need me the most at this time. Now, granted, I'm not as naive as a lot of people think I am. A lot of what people think goes over my head is me making a choice not to go from 0 to 1,000. And so I've had to learn how to just let some stuff slide, because I don't have the bandwidth to address it in a calm or professional manner. So what you think I miss, not important. What I do know that is important is that right now, where these particular young men are, they need someone who is going to be willing to cross that threshold for them. And there's some who don't want it. I can't force you to want someone to care for you. So I have to just kind of give you to our Father, pray that you stay safe, and that when I come across your path in another year or two, you're in a different place and you're doing something.
I think that's a great message to those folks that are standing at that threshold and saying, what else can I do? I've been in the space, and when I think about all of those opportunities where we've gone over and beyond for so many youth, I'm talking about, just having the fortune and being blessed enough to come in contact with thousands of youth in Atlanta. For those that we have tried to help through different programs, and it not be something that be kind of a favorable outcome. And people don't just kind of, unless something just kind of tragically happens, people that you see, you'll see them again, and I don't want to go down the path of, tragic things happening, because I know a lot of folks that are in that space and they work with youth one day and, things happen, they're just not here anymore. But there are scenarios, I think, for those people that are listening to the conversation where, you know, everyone's not going to be receptive to your information, but having the know-it-all, the wisdom, and especially the resources, I think we still got to go.
Yeah.
You just still got to go.
And you have to be taught how to receive the good. And I think
Mm-hmm.
we miss that a lot. That so many of us take that for granted because while all of our childhoods may not have been, surreal and picture perfect, a lot of us at least had opportunities to learn how to receive something. So what do you do with the young person that's never been taught how to
Mm-hmm.
receive correction or redirection in a loving manner? So that when I talk to them and I have a smile on my face, but no, what you asked Miss Kacey to do is inappropriate and I'm not taking you there, I'm not doing this. And they smile like, okay, Miss Kacey, I get it, right? And then they still call even though you said no. They are able to receive it because it didn't come with rebuking of who they were as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Just this is not a wise decision for you to make or a good ask of the resources or the time that I am willing to give to you. But you have to be taught how to receive love, redirection, discipline. And when you have young people who really have been raising themselves, right? That's the bottom line. Folks are always like, I'm an adult and I told them and they just blew me off. Okay. Well, when you are responsible for yourself, right? You don't have those kind of interactions of understanding when to submit to authority, even when you don't want to, because you don't have to.
Sure.
And we have to get out of our head and get out of, what we teach our own children and realize that not every young person has had that same experience. I tease KD a lot because he gives them what they need, but sometimes I'm like, dog, just pull back just a little bit, right?
I was riding shotgun with KD one day, and we were just kind of hanging out, and he had to go up and drop off a cooler, and I was there just kind of chill. He said, "Hey, this is Coach Clay."
Yeah.
We were there for about 15 minutes. They got back to doing what they were doing, and we left and went back to doing what we were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And they need it, right? They need to see Black men who are going to hold a standard for them.
Sure.
And that is why I think it's so important that it is a village around them, because there's something in all of my glory as a Black woman I can't give to them as young Black men. But there's a softness that they need because they don't have it.
Certainly.
And what we don't want is to send more young Black men into this world hard and jagged and that the whole world is against them and they always have to be aggressive and they always have to be on guard. There's a softness that they need to understand the balance as well and to be able to hear those hard things. And so when you're always just this, which they need, they also need someone to say, you know what, I want you to think about that a little differently.
Like, and you know what, Kacey, the thing is, if folks, in stepping back and saying, okay, to your point about Black men, and say, well, isn't that kind of the same thing that everyone needs? I was talking to a good friend of mine about the African American male experience and us as adults and talking through, what we've grown through related to COVID-19 and just kind of being on a different wavelength. I call it, having your fourth eye open. And this conversation around, Black men and mental health and our relationship with other Black men and have conversations just to be vulnerable in the space to even grow around just things that we've experienced in the world. I think that we are selling ourselves short if we don't incorporate that into how we talk to our young Black men that have dealt with trauma as well. And how can we not add that to the equation if we're talking about helping people in a holistic way and saying, oh, that's just this or oh, that's just that. I'll add that to even what you were saying. we can't even have those conversations with. I think about the Black women in my life, or women in my life that have provided counseling advice to me. It's just a different way of thinking about things.
Yeah.
It's the way teams work together to get things done. You
Mhm.
know, it's not just one thing. You know,
Yeah, it has to encompass all of it. And I think for me, it is so important for me to be mindful of that because of my own personal experience, right? At 16, having a bout with depression, where I was suicidal. And people handle pressure differently. And people are always like, well, what would you have to be suicidal about? You had your mama and your daddy in the house, your grandma and your aunties across the street, your extended family on the block. You know, we weren't rich, but I don't ever remember having to worry about food or whether the lights are going to be on and family vacations. And it's like, what in the world would you have to be tired of? And, you know, for me, it was simply a chemical imbalance, right? But it played out in my self-esteem, my self-worth. It created this cycle of overcompensating in all of my relationships. It required me to feel like I had to go above and beyond for people to like me, to accept me, to want me. Even when it became toxic and dangerous, it's like, but I just want people to feel the love that I can't feel, right? So if that means I got to go out of my way and do too much, I don't want anybody to ever feel unloved. And I wasn't. I just didn't know how to receive it. And I didn't know how to recognize it in my own life because I literally had a chemical imbalance that made it hard for me to do that. And so once I was able to find a treatment plan that worked for me, do the work, right? I now know, okay, you've done all you can do. You even went a little further. Now it's okay. You can walk away and still sleep at night because either they're not for you, they don't want what you have, or, you know, they were using you, whatever it may be. But I see some of that in these young men because what is so apparent is that when you have them one-on-one, they are totally different people. Even when the magic number is 5, right? 5 or less, these young men could walk into the White House and you would think that they had been groomed from birth to just walk with kings and all of this. But it's like when they get to 6, it just I don't know what happens. And I just look at them and I'm like, some of you all are finding your value and trying to one up the other person instead of finding your value in yourself. And that is why I go so hard for them, because I understand what the other side looks like when you don't check it and you don't get the resources that you need. You know,
Casey, with some of the things that you're pivoting into now with this work, you know, what have some of those frustrations been internally and externally? You know, internally when it comes to, and these aren't short answer questions,
yeah,
right? You
yeah,
know, internally when it comes to working with the groups of 5 or, you know, 5 plus, and then externally, you know, we talked about policy a little bit earlier, some of the other frustrations, and I want us to make sure that we talk about opportunities and resources at
for
the end of
sure.
this. But, you know, what are some of those frustrations?
Yeah. Internally is feeling like I don't have enough to meet their immediate need. um you know, and knowing that that's not my full responsibility, but because I am so connected to them and have built these relationships, and now having built relationships with some of their guardians and their parents, knowing that I can't give them what they need immediately to make the pivot and the shift off of what they call the strip. Externally, the frustration is you want them off the strip, but nobody wants to fund what it means to get them off of the strip, right? So pulling them off of the strip
When
means
we know the resources exist.
when we know the resources exist. So don't get me started in Black-led organizations being underfunded, not funded at multi-year levels, so that co-founders and executive directors and program directors can focus on the work and not constantly be in fundraising mode, right? Because that's also another frustration, is that I need to develop an organization that is going to be sustainable for not just these young men, but other young people in the city of Atlanta. But I can't fully do that work because I'm constantly having to look every day for another $10,000 check, another $5,000, another Facebook Live so somebody can send another $50 Cash App. And people don't realize how much that takes you away from the actual work that make an impact, because organizations that are Black led are underfunded, and yet we know the resources exist.
And the nonprofit community of Atlanta is under siege because more people are becoming more aware of the narrative and the story around that issue of organizations being underfunded, organizations that have been in the space, and the quantitative metric of what people were being held accountable to has not moved or decreased. And the nonprofit community, if you tuned in, or you could be an insider or outsider, we know that in that space where you're filling the gaps, it's tough work, but it's not this, hey, we gonna try this out and see, because the stakes are just so high, but it's under siege. I mean, people that are aware and willing to be at the table, be diplomatic, be professional, be forgiving, but olive branch folks that don't flip the table and run out the room. Folks are becoming more aware. And I think that this is one of the issues, not on the spoke wheel of issues, but this is one particular issue and topic that needs to be addressed literally right now. And
it's rooted in poverty, right? It's rooted in poverty. And, you know, there was an article that just went out a couple of weeks ago that talked about Atlanta becoming one of the top cities with this widening economic and income gap. And it's more and more of the Black middle class that, you know, just attracted so many people to Atlanta that is starting to disappear. Either you got it or you don't. And then for some of us who were still straddling the middle a little bit, we was like, I don't know which way this thing is about to go, right? And it's disheartening though, because those who never had a chance to even get to the middle are getting pushed further and further away from the needle, which is why you see so many young men having to literally fend for themselves. And so what we're talking about is a poverty issue. So if you say to them, it's not safe for them to be on the street, go find something else to do. Now we're going to have more homeless people because some of them are helping to pay the rent at home. And if they don't bring in what they have, now you have another family that is transient, that is living from place to place, possibly will be on the street. You have folks that are not making livable wages. And then you're also going to have a group of young people who on Maslow's hierarchy of need are going to get it any way that they can because they've got to have some place to live and they've got to have food to eat. So if you want them off the street, we need to find a way to engage them. And we have a plan for that, but it needs funding, because as we talk about changing youth development, you also have to begin to incentivize youth development. So right now we talk about all these young people who are making millions of dollars in the stock markets, and we applaud all these young people who start their own businesses, but because they didn't start theirs in a respectable manner, right? Because they don't have on khakis and a polo, or they butcher, you know, the King's English when they're talking, and their language is riddled with slang, then they're not worthy of an entrepreneurial program that's going to pay them while they learn, so that in 4 to 5 months, they can have a turnkey business where if they choose not to go to college, that's fine. We want you to, but if you don't, you have a viable source of income that is safe and legal for you to be able to take care of yourself. And this for me is a very easy fix, but again, it requires people to value them enough to say, here's what you need to do what's necessary, so that the strip never becomes the only place that they can get $300 in their pocket.
Yeah. Well, when it comes back to those frustrations and coming back to the internal side of things, allowing yourself the room and the space to communicate what's happening in the outside world to the youth that you're working with, how's that going?
It's easier than I thought it would be. You know, I've been very careful about how much of my life to let them know about. But what
Mm.
I realize is that they want authenticity, right? It doesn't mean that you tell all your business, but they want to know that, oh, you're in this with me.
Sure.
You really meant it when you said you're gonna rock with us until we decide we don't want you to rock with us
Sure.
anymore. So I remember telling them one time, I was like, look, we gotta find a schedule because Miss Casey over here trying to date and y'all about to mess all my stuff up over here because y'all got me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I feel like, Alexander O'Neal and Sherelle singing Saturday Love over here with y'all. And so we gotta find some balance and some room so Miss Casey can get hers too. And it's like, we gotta shift this thing.
Did they
People
say they can help? They can help find. They got an uncle or cousin. Have you heard that yet?
oh, believe me, because they want to be close.
So yeah, come on, uncle.
Right. Even in sharing that, they have fallen back on the weekends, right? So like literally on my way home today to get ready for our interview, they were at the strip and I passed them and I pulled into the gas station and everybody stopped what they're doing and just kind of ran to the car, right? And it was like, Miss Casey, you always popping up on us. That's my job right now, to pop up on you. Make sure to keep you on your toes.
Inspect what you expect.
Absolutely.
Learning from my old government days. I learned that from a senior citizen that knew what she was talking about. Inspect what you expect. Yep. But go ahead.
And they were like, we're gonna pick up. I said, I didn't say anything to you about picking up trash. I just said, what are y'all doing? Right? And then one of them was like, Miss Casey, it's a Sunday. We didn't call you. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Out of the 15 of y'all, I got 2 text messages this morning because they realized Miss Casey gives so much that we have to find a way to give back to her. I want to read this text message real quick to you because for me, it speaks volumes. Somebody, one of the young men asked me this morning, if I had any work for him today, and I said, I don't. He said, okay, well, that's cool. I really appreciate everything you've done for us, Miss Casey. And I don't know how we're ever going to pay you back one day, but for sure, I got you. And thank you so much. Even when I told him no, I didn't have any money to put in his pocket. He said, that's cool. I appreciate you. And for me, that's the work that's worth it. That's worth the 3 a.m. text messages, the, bombardment of calls before 10 a.m. in the morning about what's going to happen after school. Is that some of them it's beyond Miss Casey just finding another way to put money in their pocket, that we've reached a place where they know that I care about their well-being holistically. So even when I have to say no, it's okay, I'm still gonna rock with you. The no wasn't to me because you have a personal issue. The no really was because the resource isn't there, but the resource is not tied anymore to my care and concern for them because I chose to cross the threshold. Sure. I chose to build a relationship and I chose to give them opportunities to trust me.
Mm-hmm. I think for those that are watching that may have been hesitant around crossing that threshold or building those relationships, I think you've done an excellent job of talking about not just what to expect, but also what to consider. I think that's a big part of even our growth as adults. And even as we talk about the nonprofit community in Atlanta, because it is a multi-million-dollar, community that says, hey, we are going to address the gaps in some of these areas, including issues with our youth in the urban core. And, you've done an excellent job, Kacey, in talking through what folks, really the call to action around what folks are doing now and what people can do further. I wanted to come back to something that I've recognized when it comes to the media around, I've seen written stories, I've seen stories on TV as well. And Kacey, taking again that external perspective with conversations that you have internally, how has that dialogue been with how you not just tell the students about where they're growing individually, but what it is that you're continuing to try to do? What has that been?
It's been see it for yourself. I record every news story that's been done on Hey, been done on them. and they come over, 'cause still doing programming out of my living room. So back to that opportunity, needing space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
How many square feet do you need?
at least 1,200.
At least 1,200. So 1,200 square foot on preferably Center City, West Side.
West side,
Okay.
west side of Atlanta, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they get to hear for themselves. And I was like, no, but that's not true. I'm like, but okay, you say it's not true, you're not violent, but do you see how one action or consistent behavior can tell a narrative that is not reflective of your true character?
Mm-hmm.
And they get to see it for themselves, and then we begin to have conversation and dialogue. I have 4 young men who have heard me enough to say, when y'all get to 5 or more, it gets sketchy, who call me and say, Ms. Kacey, it's 5 of us, I'm dipping out. I don't have to remind them anymore, right? 4 of them, Ms. Kacey, I was down at the strip, I'm headed home because there's about 7 of us down, and I don't want any issues. And I'm like, it's working, because while it's not fair, I have to have the conversation. It is 12 Black boys descending upon one car.
Yeah.
Y'all are cussing, y'all are fussing, y'all tossing stuff, y'all are doing whatever it is. And while your intent is not negative or ill, your behavior tells a different story. And until you become aware of that, you're going to keep doing the same thing and getting the same results. And so I had to just reinforce for them, everything in life is not going to be fair. Sometimes we have to make modifications to how we manifest physically who we are, not change who we are, but sometimes we got to tweak how it shows up in the world, depending on the environment and the situation that we are in. And
I hear that theology coming. I hear that theology. Keep going. I want to say amen. Keep going. We with you.
Until you learn how to work together,
yes,
and understand that you don't always have to operate from a poverty mindset. And it was like, well, Miss Kacey, what does that mean? Meaning that if you're not the first one to the car, that you're going to walk away with nothing, right? That's a poverty mindset, to think that you've got to beat your brother down to get to the car window, to get the $10, to get the $20, because you don't have any expectation that somebody else is going to come down the street to give you what you need for the day. Now, either you can stay in that mindset and always have this behavior, or you can begin to think that there is something else. Sometimes it's shifting. They're getting it. Some of them is like, I'm just going to move a little further down the street. I'm going to go to another corner where it's not as populated. And then they come back and they're done in 30 minutes because they hit their goal, because guess what? Nobody else was down there with them, because they took a step back and say, I'm going to lose this 10, they're going to make this 100. But it requires consistent conversation about principles and about changing your action to get a different result. And now the goal is to try to move them off of the strip altogether, right? To develop e-commerce, to figure out what are some other business ideas that you all have, because Friday night, they were making 2,500 sandwiches for the Michelle Obama and Janelle Monáe event that happened on yesterday. And to see the focus of these young men that I sometimes got a Black mama yoke them up on sometimes, they was like, yo, we want to get it done. 8 o'clock came, they were supposed to be done. We were there at 12:30. They didn't complain. They didn't say somebody gonna tip us more. None of that, because they found purpose in what they were doing, even in that moment, and wanted to finish it. But even in that, I asked them, what's your game plan for coming off the street? Right? So I tell people all the time, y'all think Miss Kacey grew up one way, but I can tell you times where the SWAT team came down the street looking for family members of mine, or folks knocking on my door because of things that some of my family members were involved in. So I'm not naive to this. What's your game plan for getting off the street? Everybody's got to have an expiration date. Yeah. And they started talking about, oh, a year, 5 years. I said, nope, unacceptable. I need y'all to start thinking more like end of this year, 12/31/2020, because you have the skills, you have the support, and you have the resources to do something different. Now, if you like the thrill of being out there, say that, and we can find something else to get you excited about. But that is not the only way that you have to make money. But I also don't want people to criminalize them because they chose that way.
Sure.
Not knowing what drove them there in the first place.
Sure. Casey, that's all wonderful. It takes me mentally to so many different places around what's needed and necessary, and the patience involved in the whole process. I wanted to close the conversation out with, what your biggest fear is for this new pivot.
Yeah.
But before getting to that, I wanted to, because that could be a bit emotional, I wanted to get back to the specific needs. We talked about space of, 4 walls and a roof, 1,200 square feet. When we talk about dollar amount, have you already, from a programmatic standpoint,
300,000.
300,000? So in knowing what we know, we got to add probably about 455 to that annual budget, right? And that's just for this, not including other programs that Hay is doing. And so just for this particular component, fiscal year, ask of 500,000. Other needs, other opportunities for folks that might see this and say, how is it that I can help?
Yeah, you can help us by finding positive opportunities for these young men to get involved in, right? That helps us lessen the time that they're on the street. So shout out to Kacey Venning over at Atlanta Breakfast Club, right? So as we talk about relationships, Kacey didn't just see me. I have a relationship with Kacey. I know Kacey, right? So when it came time for him to have to figure out, how do I get this done? Oh, I can go this route. Or I know what Kacey is doing. Let me call and get her boys involved. And so finding things to do. Shout out to my church, right? We had a huge food drive that we were doing for the seniors, over at Oasis. And they were looking for people to come and load the truck from the Wayfield food store and put the boxes together. And they said, yeah, it's a volunteer opportunity. Or we got a little money, we got a budget. Call Kacey and her boys to come to give them an opportunity to do something good. But we also know the need, so let's compensate them a little bit for it, right? So opportunities like that, cleaning out garages, they love yard work. I've never seen boys love blowers and weed eaters and lawnmowers as much as I've seen this group.
When I was their age, that's all we did. Until we started to work, we would, well, let me say this, that is work, because we were working. But we would, look, come fix this lawnmower, come fix this blower, and we're going to figure it out. Half the rake, all types of stuff.
Absolutely. And they do a great job, right? Sure. They do a phenomenal job. They take pride in what they do. And so many people are always shocked, like, oh my gosh. I'm like, well, what'd you expect when these little Black boys showed up, right? And so they always get the job done. No, Miss Kacey, we can't leave yet because I see this over here. We didn't finish that. And so they are not immune to hard work.
And it's the best season to make money in that space, because when the leaves start falling, we already knew it. We already knew what we were ramping up to. To make all this fall money.
So if you have a yard or know somebody with a yard, we have a tab on our website called Hire the Boys.
Now, what's the website?
Helping Empower Youth. So helpingempoweryouth.org. You can go to the website, click on the tab, Hire the Boys, fill out a short form, and we get them there, right? We transport them there. There's an adult that stays there with them until the job is complete. And it gives them an opportunity to have something to do. So, fill out that form.
Thank you, Katie. Katie put the website in. Katie's clocked in. She's having a blast. Thank you so much. She's typing, I see all caps and everything. Awesome. We've got a really good crowd here and on Facebook.
Awesome. But yeah, so that's one way that everybody can get involved and be a part of it. And everybody's got something they don't want to do, right? At their house. And then also, if you are an employer, a hiring manager, most of our boys are of age to work. And I get daily asked, Miss Kacey, help me find a job. Miss Kacey, please help me find a job. They want to work. So if you have space and room for a 15, 16, 17-year-old let us know. They're not all prepared to fill out the application exactly how you want it, right? They may not be polished in the interview, but we're just looking for opportunities for people to give our boys a chance. And that is where I put my reputation on the line to say, look, if it don't work, call me. You know what I'm saying? Let me take the onus. But I refuse to not give these boys a chance simply because they don't measure up to what is palatable for people, easy for them to digest.
And so last question, when it comes to your biggest fear regarding, this particular, project, this particular initiative, this particular work, this particular lifestyle, and not just when it comes to, the water boys, but just the work in its totality as you even lean into, becoming a person of the cloth, as we say it in the South. And shout out to Maisha. Maisha Good was
That's
commenting.
my god sister.
Oh, really? Her and David, they're phenomenal people. Shout out to the New Leaders Council Network out there. We met through New Leaders Council.
Yeah, I told you I fly under the radar. But that's my god sister, hands down.
She had a beautiful comment about the work y'all are doing.
Yeah, that's my sissy.
But yeah, so back to the question, and I'll let you close us out, Kacey, in that regard, because I can't not have folks understand the depth and the breadth and the weight of what it is that you're doing.
And like you said, it can be, an emotional response. For me, my biggest fear is that I don't fully execute everything that's in me to grow this organization to the place that makes the impact in Atlanta that it's designed to do. And part of that is me, one of those conversations we were starting before we went live about that balance of being humble, but saying, look, y'all can keep looking over me if y'all want to, right? Because I don't fit a particular mold or, run in a particular circle. Keep passing me over if you want to, and you're gonna miss out on the one thing that is needed to change the trajectory of this community when it comes to Black Atlanta, especially Black youth on the West Side, simply because I didn't do NLC or Leadership Atlanta, right? And part of that is on me by letting people think Kacey just does enough to stay in the loop when it's so much more than that. And so my fear is that I don't continue this journey and this work that I'm doing to say, no, I have the answers and you need to start looking over here for them, because if not, we're going to miss the mark, and everything that everybody else has built is going to crumble in 10 to 15 years because we did not invest in our youth in the way that we needed to be those leaders that are going to take over these organizations and these corporations and these small businesses. And so what I don't want to see is that, hey, it's just the little engine that could, when we're doggone Amtrak, right? For the city of Atlanta, and being able to find the resources and the support that we need to really grow this thing, because we do something I've never seen any other organizations do. We're able to meet the needs of so many young people at one time, because we are not bound by what we think programming should look like for young people. We let them tell us what they need, and then as adults, we use wisdom to design what it's going to take to get them to the next level. So, for me, the fear is me not exhausting all of who I am, that makes this organization great and makes this organization run, so that we can make sure that these 15 boys become the millionaires that they want to. And then I've deposited enough in them that they come back and they continue to do the same thing for the generation that comes after them.
Beautiful, beautiful. You touched on something that speaks to the tone and the environment, going back to, people that we know in the ecosystem in Atlanta. I remember a conversation we were having. It was like a virtual dialogue through Outstanding Atlanta. Shout out to James Hammond. Shout out to Candace Basemore. I think they put it together. And I think you know both of them as well. one of the comments that I had was that if these types of leadership organizations aren't addressing these types of conversations and dialogues and having practical outcomes related to them,
Yeah,
then it's on us as well.
absolutely.
Because I went through a lot of those programs, right? But it's not just about the notoriety or the recognition or the credibility. If folks in those conversations, in those ciphers, in those rooms, at those tables say, hey, I've got an opinion about this issue, but none of them have a relationship with you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
In their relationship assessment of talking through solutions,
yeah,
then they're not doing it. I'm not going to even ask the questions of what are you doing anyway? They're not doing what's necessary.
yeah,
If they don't know you, and this is an issue, when they have an opinion, if they skate through the city down Spring Street or Boone or
yep,
anywhere through the West Side, and they don't have a relationship with you,
yeah,
then they're missing the mark.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, God bless you, Kacey.
Oh, thank you.
I think that what you're doing, not just with this assignment from God, but what you've done throughout your career to help people see their best self, so that they can be better people to other folks, so they can see their best self. It truly is, God's work.
Yes.
And I'm humbled to be able to not just be, in the trenches with you, but I know that there's some accountability when it comes to all the things that I see that go into helping to support what it is that you and Katie and everyone else has been helping you to build, to write this story and tell this narrative, so that it's something that people can be empowered and inspired by, rather than it be a burden to the city. And we've got to figure this out, because it's what defines us more than anything else. It's what we do and how we help the least of these that need these opportunities, because that's where some of the best stories are, especially the Black stories in this city. And so I think that you are, you're an angel in what you do, and we're gonna continue to rock and roll with you and speak this truth. And so glad that you're able to join this interview series, because I gotta have you back to talk about more related to what we're doing after we get these resources.
Yes.
To lean in even more. You better believe.
I want to get them.
Any final thoughts at all?
No, I just want to say thank you to you, because it's these kind of conversations that are necessary, not just for the work that Hay is doing in this particular season right now, but just being very, like you said, candid and open about the things that impact us. What I want most of all for those of us who have been fortunate enough to have this Black experience and get to a place where we no longer have to struggle every day, is to remember those who are still trying to get there. And that there's a responsibility that we have, to reach back. And, I can't talk about this work without KD. I remember one time, KD is very much, teach the man how to fish type of person. And I am too. But for me, I felt like, oh, people are getting me when he said, we teach them how to fish, but along the way, we still have to give them a fish, right? And so for me, that is our responsibility as Black Atlanta, that we teach people how to do for themselves, but until they learn the lesson, they still have the need. And so we still have to meet the need while we're teaching them how to do it for themselves. And I want to see more of that from us, not just I figured it out, I did it, here's my little $100 contribution this month, drop my stuff off to Goodwill, I've checked all the boxes, but yet we forget you make decisions based on knowledge that you have. And if you don't have knowledge, you can't make decisions. And I'll end with this, and this is what I say to my boys all the time. I'm always going to give you options, because when I give you options, you are always going to choose the better of what is presented in front of you. And so we have to learn how to keep giving options.
Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Kacey Venning.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. We'll see y'all soon on the next episode. We got a great October ahead. I've communicated the lineup, but you'll be able to RSVP starting after we air this show. But thank you again, Kacey. God bless you. Stay covered.
Same to you.